Resident Evil 4.
Hey guys, welcome back to another PS2 Memories video. Here we are taking a look at Resident Evil 4. This is actually the fourth installment in the main story arc on the Resident Evil franchise. The game was actually released in 2005, and originally it actually started off life as a Nintendo GameCube exclusive and was later ported to the PlayStation 2 and other formats over the next few years. At the point of its release, it was actually the sixth major installment in the Resident Evil series, because there had been a number of spin-offs that had also been released, both on the PlayStation 1 and the likes of the PlayStation 2. The game itself takes place 6 years after the events of Raccoon City, around the events of Resident Evil 2 and 3, and you reprise the role of Leon S. Kennedy from Resident Evil 2. And this game takes a totally different perspective compared to a lot of the other games in the series, moving away from the likes of the fixed camera angle perspectives, even some of the first person arcade style elements that were in the likes of the Survivor series as well, in favour of an over the shoulder third person action adventure perspective. It was also one of the first games, if not the first game, to implement this new type of game style, and it actually revolutionised action adventure games and even survival horror games moving forward, because as of this game being released, a lot of other spin-offs, clones and copies of this style of game have been seen for years, and it has influenced so many hundreds of games in similar genres, and it's literally become popularised throughout the games industry for the last 10 or 15 years. The game itself is also considered to be one of the greatest games ever made because of those influences that it actually had, as it helped revolutionise, like I said, an entire genre and actually brought things to the next level. It did remove some horror or survival horror elements in favour of more action orientated elements in the franchise at that point. The game also went through a few different versions and prototypes, very similar to what happened with Resident Evil 2 on the PlayStation 1, where there was a development version or prototype version in the works, and it was about 80% complete when Capcom pulled the plug on it and decided to scrap it in favour of the Resident Evil 2 game that we initially got, and that version is now called Resident Evil 1.5. Resident Evil 4 went through a similar kind of process where there was different versions that were actually in development. One that actually did go through quite a lengthy process of development, and again it was later axed in favour of the version of Resident Evil 4 that we actually got today. That version is also known as Resident Evil 3.5, and again Leon S. Kennedy was in that game as well. But if you actually go online on the internet, you will actually find videos online of old trailers and gameplay versions that are actually available, that you can actually see the game in action. And again, it uses the fixed camera angles perspective of the original games, but the graphics were actually all in full 3D, and graphics in the game were actually phenomenal for the time in development. But Capcom didn't really like where the game was actually going, so the producer of the original game, Shinji Mikami, was brought back in to head the project and to take it in a new direction. Even though Capcom kind of were taking a risk with trying this new style, it actually worked out for the better, because again, like I said, this game has single-handedly has influenced so many different titles, action orientated, survival horror orientated, on different formats across the board in terms of games development. Plus, this game as well is also one of the most ported games in history, because this game has been ported to pretty much every single console that you can think of, every modern console, even mobile devices. What originally started off on the Nintendo GameCube was later ported to the PlayStation, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 and upwards, and again it will continue to get reworked and put on newer consoles. There is also a remake of the game as well, currently being worked on by Capcom, but there's very little news about it actually currently at the moment. But it is exciting to see how they'll actually work with the game, because like with Resident Evil 2 and the Resident Evil 2 remake that came out in 2019, it was interesting to see the differences between the two, but they actually used over the shoulder perspective that was in Resident Evil 4, but they actually managed to make it work, and it actually in a lot of ways is one of the best games Capcom have ever made, and it's definitely one of the best Resident Evil games. They took what was an original concept and ideas from the original game, and they somehow managed to make it better. So it will be interesting to see if they can do the same thing again with the Resident Evil 4 remake, because again, Resident Evil 4 is pretty much the best selling game in the series alongside Resident Evil 2, but it's also considered to be the most popular game because this was the game that actually, for a lot of people, introduced gamers to the Resident Evil franchise. A lot of gamers would never have played the original games, but they would have actually played this here, so this would have led them on to going on to playing the subsequent sequels. Now, even though there were similar sequels in terms of Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, they weren't as well received, even though they were good games in their own right. But in all honesty, even in my own opinion, and I do love those games myself, but Resident Evil 4 still hands down the best of this style of game. And it still is the best of this style of game in my opinion, and it still has not been bettered even to this day, which in a lot of ways is an incredible achievement, but it shows how well the game lasts even by today's standards, that it's still just a phenomenal game. So the game actually has you reprising the role of Leon S. Kennedy, and he is tasked with trying to rescue the president's kidnapped daughter, Ashley, from a group of unknown terrorists. But they've also infected Ashley and even Leon themselves throughout the course of the story, or with a new type of virus or parasite known as Las Plagas. So it actually gives the ability to completely manipulate the mind of the actual host, so that they can have full control over them and tell them what to do and so forth. So you can actually see that throughout the game, as you can see all the residents in the village in Resident Evil 4, all the residents that you come across are all infected with the same virus. They're not zombies per se, because they can act and think for themselves and they do things in a different way, but they're still controlled by a different type of source, so they're still considered to be the main type of enemy in the game. The game itself, even though it's more action orientated, it wouldn't be as scary as some of the previous games in the series, but there is elements still of survival horror in it. There is a lot of creepy elements in the game, but because it's more action focused, there's that much stuff going on in the game, and you'll notice it when you're actually playing it. Sometimes there's things happen that fast that it doesn't really leave you with a lot of time to really react or even feel scared, but that doesn't take away from the game and play experience. The game itself is a phenomenal experience, and it's one of the best games ever made, hands down. And I even find myself always even going back to playing this game every so often, and I played it on loads of different formats. I originally bought it on the Nintendo GameCube because I was just that eager to play it. Then eventually I got a copy of it then on the PlayStation 2, and even then on the PlayStation 3, even as recently as the PlayStation 4. That'll tell you how good of a game it actually is. I also played it, my brother actually had a version of it on the Nintendo Wii, which I will be honest, actually I still even think, and I'm sure a lot of people agree with me, the Nintendo Wii version is actually the best version of the game I think currently still to play out there, because the controls work so well with the Wii controller nunchucks and the wireless controllers. It just adapts so well, and you can move a lot more freely and you can react to things a lot quicker than you actually can just using a controller, because it's like playing with like an arcade style gun. You just aim and you can just move the stick around on the screen, and it moves in real time, and it moves a lot faster, and you can react to things a lot quicker than you could with the controller, because with the controller when you're going to aim you still have to use the analog stick to try and move the cursor around to figure out where you're going. And sometimes it's not so much that there's a delay, it's just sometimes that you can't react as quick to attacks and different things that are going on compared to the Wii control. So it's still considered, in my opinion, the best version of the game, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will actually agree. But all in all, this is a phenomenal title. It's definitely one of the best Resident Evil games, even though it is survival horror, but it's more action focused. But it doesn't take away from how good this game actually is. This is an incredible game, and if you have not played Resident Evil 4, I highly recommend you need to give this game a go. It's long, it's actually one of the longest Resident Evils in terms of the gameplay. The game actually, the campaign length is very, very long, and a lot longer compared to your typical Resident Evil game. So it's definitely all the more reason to want to play it, and I highly recommend that you do. But I'd love to know your thoughts on Resident Evil 4. Which was the best version of the game that you had actually played, and did you enjoy it? Did you like playing on the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Nintendo Wii, even on the PC? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure to share them down in the comments below. So if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and also if you would like to see more type videos like this here, or even more videos on Resident Evil, even other survival horror games that were released on the PlayStation 2, then make sure to subscribe to the channel, and again hit that bell icon to be updated of future videos. And until next time, keep those gaming memories alive.